sciences, financial services. Again, I thought Angus, you'd be interested. Scotland has such a strong financial services industry, and actually it's going to benefit.
Here comes the cavalry. Yes, yes, Angus Brandon McNeill. Stop taking our glorious leader, Rishi Sunak, to the cleaners on Brexit and independence. You're absolutely highlighting the absolute skip fire we pushed for and we demanded for all those years. Yes, sit back and watch the chair of the International Trade Committee, the fabulous Angus Brandon McNeill, make our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, look like a prize plum and say that free ports will be our saviour and bring back the glory days of Rule Britannia, Britannia waves the rules.
Prime Minister, we have a new First Minister in Scotland. I think he wanted a Section 30 for a referendum, and I think you've rebuffed that idea. Is that correct?
I haven't had the opportunity to talk to the new First Minister yet, so I look forward to doing that. And
in the Section 30 then?
So I look forward to having that conversation with him.
If you don't grant that Section 30, it would be that you don't want Scotland to have a referendum. And in that case, why would you prefer Scotland to go down the election route for independence rather than the referendum route?
As I said, I'm looking forward to having a dialogue with the new First Minister, and as I've always said, I think actually what people in Scotland want is to see their two governments working together to deliver for them. I was pleased that one of the last things I was able to do with the previous First Minister was announce...
Stop patronising the good people of Scotland. You're just looking and talking quite insulting towards their intelligence.
2 new free ports in Scotland, which again I think she welcomed rightly as a good example of that cooperation, delivering jobs and opportunities for.
You said something quite important there. What does people in Scotland want? Now the world is watching. The democratic world, the good guys, and the non-democratic world, the bad guys. If the people in Scotland speak at the ballot box for independence or not, do you think it's incumbent on us all to respect that voice of the people at the ballot box?
I think in elections people vote on all sorts of different things, and I don't think it's appropriate to try and hijack a general election for
Surely you're free in a democracy to say anything you want in a manifesto. Are you trying to prescribe the manifesto that somebody would run on? I mean, the bad guys are watching.
I think that's what the previous First Minister was trying to do, and I think actually people in Scotland will vote on the various issues that they think are important to them. And
so as the rest of the world might recognise that result, you might have Iceland, you might have the Nordics, you might have the Baltics, for example, all recognising as the people of Scotland would. Are you saying that you'd unilaterally deny independence or attempt to unilaterally deny that the Scottish people had spoken for independence? A very bad situation to get yourself into.
I think we did have a referendum on it. And,
we did, but the people were told it was
a once in a generation.
Are you denying that?
We were told it was a once in a generation referendum, and the people of Scotland had an opportunity to express their view.
We're getting that.
And they did. So I don't think anyone can deny that they were given that chance. And actually, we're also subsequent to that delivered on all the commitments that were made, all the commitments that were made to devolve greater power to Scotland, which is now the most powerful devolved assembly anywhere in the world. Those commitments were made to the people of Scotland. Those commitments have been delivered, and actually, what they're also seeing now is strong cooperation where we can to deliver for them, whether it's on the cost of living, whether it's on things like free ports, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
I'm glad to see that you don't rule out recognising the ballot box. And your predecessor, but one, did call the 2019 general election a once in a lifetime general election, and I hope you're not going to take him at his word on that. When it comes to Northern Ireland, you're a fan of the single market now. When did you take the road to Damascus on that very issue?
No, I think what I was referring to, and actually, as I say, I'm sad that we're having this conversation again.
Angus, put down that bloody pen.
Because I think what I was very clearly referring to is the unique status of Northern Ireland in the United Kingdom, because it's the only part of the United Kingdom that shares a land border with a member of the EU, and also is a part of our country that has had a history of troubles, and the balance of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement is incredibly important to ensuring stability and peace in Northern Ireland, and it was decided by everybody that we shouldn't have a hard border on the island of Ireland, and that's why Northern Ireland has a special and unique status inside the United Kingdom that I think everyone acknowledges, and actually trying to make political points about that I don't think is appropriate, and I think it's very clear that Northern Ireland is different in that regard, and it's right that we respect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement and the balance that is required to make sure that the agreement works properly.
Well, before your 180-degree turn on the single market, it is important because you know, and you will have certainly known as Chancellor, that it's a 4% or 5% damage to GDP is this choice for the UK to leave the single market and the customs union. It is affecting people on the day-to-day. It's affecting their costs of living. Prime Minister, if it's okay for Northern Ireland, and you say it's got a border with the European market, what about the south of England? It's 20 miles away by ferry. It's not far away by ferry. Companies come to me in trade and they tell me that it would be far better for them to be in the European market, single market, than the situation they currently have. It's paperwork central.
Again, just what I said previously, Northern Ireland, I think it's really not to recognise the unique and special status of Northern Ireland inside the United Kingdom because of the history of what's happened in that part of our country, which we've had an appropriate discussion on the anniversary of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, which is a good reminder of the delicate situation in Northern Ireland, and it's right that we treat that situation with the consideration that it deserves and recognise that we do need to ensure that all strands of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement are respected, and it's important to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland, and that's why we need a special set of solutions for Northern Ireland, which we've now found with the Windsor Framework.
I just want to touch on wider trade issues, but just a small data point to see what you understand about. You made on earlier about budget deficits. In the 78 years since 1945, how many years has the UK been in deficit, would you approximate?
I'm sure it's very rare for countries to run overall budget surpluses.
Yeah. It's 67 years, and the UK has only paid its way for 11 years. Out of that money that's been borrowed, only about 1.7% of that has been returned. Given the economic plates and the way they are and they're moving at the moment, and with the Americans pursuing the Inflation Reduction Act and the European Union with their CBAMs, carbon border adjustment mechanisms and state aid changes, how do you think the UK is going to respond so it doesn't get economically squeezed between these two big blocks? As you know, there are boardrooms everywhere making decisions on whether they're going to invest, and you mentioned earlier investment by companies in the UK being a problem for productivity. Surely this leaves you a huge problem for improving productivity with those massive tectonic plates moving and the small UK in the middle not part of either.
So actually we were also making progress on carbon border adjustment mechanism, and it's something that I had conversations with my European counterparts, including Olaf Scholz, when I was doing my previous job, and the Treasury is carrying on that work. So we're actually, similar to the EU, looking at what appropriate carbon border adjustment mechanisms are, because they are reasonable and sensible things to implement, and actually it may well be that there is, in the same way that for emissions trading schemes and things, there's opportunities for cooperation across those, it may well be that those work well. So actually we're having conversations on carbon border adjustment mechanisms as it is. And with regard to foreign direct investment, and the UK has got an incredible track record in attracting foreign direct investment, and pointed out the survey of 3,000 or 4,000 global CEOs from over 100 countries who just a few months ago named the UK as their number one European investment destination, behind over the US and China, which is an enormous statement of confidence from global business in the UK, and I think you're starting to see...
Time's against us, and you get many a chance for the microphone. What I'd just like to say finally, Prime Minister, is as we mentioned earlier, the damage to Brexit is 4 to 5% of GDP to the economy, which you were one of the politicians who chose that. The trade agreements are yielding very little, perhaps 0.02 to 0.08. It's like throwing away £400 or £500 to get £2 or £8 back. And the Department of Trade is changing and altering and being merged. Is your government finally recognising that, perhaps maybe also like Freeports, that trade agreements have very little to give GDP in relation to the huge damage that's been chosen to do to the UK economy with Brexit?
I'm just surprised that you're having a go at Freeports, and we've just announced 2 with the Scottish Government.
That we could have done while we were still inside the evil overlords of the EU.
To deliver in Scotland, because I think they do agree, as we have done in Wales.
What is the GDP
I think that's probably recognition from the SNP government. The Freeports were actually a good thing, and they are something that we can do post-Brexit.
Do you have a figure for the
we couldn't do properly inside the EU? Now we can, and it's great that we could announce 2 in Wales last week, 2 in Scotland previously, and
But
it's a
you've
good
done huge
example.
damage with Brexit.
And I think
didn't want
when
it.
you talk about Brexit, there are many opportunities of Brexit. Trade deals are one. Things like free ports are another.
There's no
Control
GDP
over
gain.
migration, regulatory change, and I know obviously in
There's no
Scotland
gain.
has chosen not to take advantage, for example, of the new gene editing bills that are actually going to increase food productivity in other parts
Seriously,
of
Prime
the
Minister,
UK.
seriously.
And actually, whether it's
Mr.
reforms to
McNeill.
life sciences, financial services. Again, I thought I thought Angus, you'd be interested. Scotland has such a strong financial services industry,
Mr.
and actually, it's
McNeill.
going to benefit
Here comes the cavalry.
enormously from the Chancellor's
Look at what
Edinburgh
independent
reform.
Mr.
Ireland has
McNeill.
achieved.
And these are all fantastic opportunities for Brexit. As I said, whether it's financial services, whether it's what we can do in life sciences or elsewhere, whether it's free
Ireland's
ports.
collapsed.
Mr.
We
McNeill.
want to make sure we deliver those
Order.
benefits across the UK, and I'm glad we could do that in Scotland too.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
You are way over time, Mr. McNeill, and off-piste. But you are entitled to ask your own questions.
Let's be honest here. Rishi Sunak, just say no. We're not going to grant you, your new leader, a Section 30 for another referendum and give the good people of Scotland a chance to decide their own futures. Instead of just repeating the same patronising reply, I found it quite insulting, especially to intelligent people up in Scotland. Just say, no, you're not. At least they know where they stand instead of that nonsense he bounted. When Angus mentioned about going down the election route, I've got to say with the new leader of the SNP, Hamza Yousaf, sorry if I've said it wrong, I think it's going to be really interesting in the next election. Won't it? See, I'm wondering, would the SNP get more votes? And if they do, well, it's a clear sign that whoever becomes the next leader of United Kingdom, I don't think SNP want anything to do with them, do they? And this once-in-a-generation vote, it's getting old now, isn't it? Especially when they threatened that a vote to leave this union would also mean leaving the European Union, knowing full well, not long after they had a referendum and they've dragged Scotland out of a union they didn't want to leave in the first place. I'm sorry, Rishi, you just can't have it both ways. And I just think it's grating to hear them say that, hide behind it, it's quite pathetic. I also had a chuckle about, when he ran rings about his road to Damascus, about the single market with Northern Ireland and the Windsor Framework, with getting the best of both worlds and deal of a lifetime, fantastic deal. And I just chuckled when he brought up the land of dope and Tories had been in deficit question was a pearler. But don't worry, our floundering Rishi Sunak, while you're punting the party line about free ports, you can be sure to know that fellow Brextremist Sir Bernard Jenkins will dive in and save you from facts and evidence about the absolute mess that is the Brexit that you promised everyone: the sunlit uplands, golden unicorns, cheap shoes and food for peasants and cheaper energy prices as well. We're mad, innit? But anyway, what do you guys think? Let me know down below, and I've chunted on enough, so I shall leave the video here until the next time. I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.